Again, thank you for joining us today. I will be speaking, I have a prepared press release. I will be speaking from that, and then I will also have some extemporaneous comments. I'd be happy to answer questions from the press. I'm joined today by important members of the community, including several mayors or first selectmen. I have Bill Dickinson, who's the mayor of Wallingford, standing behind me. Ed Bailey, who's the first selectman from Middlefield. We have people from the business community here as well as ordinary citizens. And all of them are concerned about the draconian cuts that are being leveled by the governor's executive order and the devastating impact they're going to have on our cities and towns. We are here today to urge state lawmakers to come together and stand up to Governor Malloy's veto of the state budget that passed the legislature with bipartisan support. The governor vetoed this budget, offering no alternative plan for towns, cities, and nonprofits, even though his executive order is a devastating event and has a dramatic effect on all of them. The immediate impact of the governor's order on our towns in the 13th district would be that Meriden itself would lose $3.8 million in municipal aid during the next 12 months. Middletown would lose $7.6 million in municipal aid in the next 12 months. Cheshire would lose $13.1 million in municipal aid in the next 12 months. And by the way, the city town manager for Cheshire, Mike Malone, estimated that the impact on the average property owner in Cheshire would be $1,100 per year if the governor's draconian cuts continue. Middlefield itself would lose $2.2 million in municipal aid in the next year. Without a budget, this order means significant school cuts become a reality. It means teacher layoffs, reduction of services, and property tax increases. Our state needs a budget, and the truth before us today is we do have a budget. It is a budget that passed with bipartisan support in both chambers of the General Assembly, something that the governor's budget couldn't gather, and neither could the Democratic budget. They couldn't gather any bipartisan support. It's a budget that not only avoids the governor's draconian, whoops, let me get that. Sorry about that, Mark Davis. There we go. Okay. Sure. There you go.
We all have days like that. How's that?
That's good. I'm not going to touch it, so. Good. It is a budget that not only avoids the governor's draconian executive order that would hurt schools in most towns and cities, it is also a budget that creates stability for our towns and cities over the next 2 years and for many years to come. While Governor Malloy vetoed it, he does not have the final word. That is up to the legislature, and we are urging action. We are not only asking legislators to vote for a veto override, we are also encouraging citizens to contact House and Senate Democrats, asking them to vote to override the governor's budget veto, to do what's best for our state and our citizens and not toe the party line. The budget that passed the legislature increased municipal aid and K-12 education funding, and for the first time in years, distributes education funding to districts most in need by following a real education cost-sharing formula. The budget that passed the legislature with bipartisan support, under that budget, Meriden would see a $2.25 million increase over the next 2 years in municipal aid. Middletown would see an increase of over $10 million in the next 2 years in total municipal aid. And Cheshire would see nearly $1 million increase in aid, while Middlefield, the fourth town in my district, would be held harmless. It would be basically not suffer any kind of cuts like the draconian cuts the governor is implementing. The budget that passed the legislature helps restore funding to nonprofits in the governor's executive order that were cut. I'm talking about wonderful organizations like ARC and Gilead Community Services and Kun. It also doesn't have the many harmful tax increases proposed in the other budgets, such as a cell phone tax, a sales tax increase, a sales tax on non-prescription drugs, reduction in the property tax credit for automobiles, or any new real estate and property taxes. This budget that passed the legislature does make difficult decisions to reduce expenses and cut administrative costs throughout government. But at the same time, it prioritizes the core functions of government. It restores funding for vital social services. It's a budget that protects services, particularly in low-income neighborhoods that were cut in other budgets, such as Care for Kids, Meals on Wheels, the Connecticut Home Care Program, mental health and substance abuse treatment grants to combat opioid crisis, as well as day and employment opportunities for individuals with disabilities. The budget that Governor Malloy vetoed does not shift teacher pension costs onto municipalities and property taxpayers. This is an expense the state should be paying. Shifting it onto towns and cities means cuts to teachers, cuts to schools, and increased property taxes. And our towns have had enough. The budget that passed the legislature also boosts transportation funding and implements a 30-year fully funded transportation financing plan without tolls, by the way, and without a mileage tax to spark economic growth in our state and ensure our transportation systems remain safe. In addition to helping our schools, our cities, our towns, and our core services, this budget also implements the structural changes our state desperately needs to start us on the long road to fiscal stability. This includes a strong, enforceable spending cap, a real spending cap, that the public's been waiting for ever since the constitutional amendment passed going on 26 years ago. This will help us control the state's ballooning debt. As mentioned before, the budget includes a fully revised educational cost-sharing formula that takes into account factors such as enrollment, poverty, and wealth. This results in an increase in ECS aid to poor towns with growing populations and needy children populations, and a decrease in funding to wealthier towns, declining in enrollment over time, over the next few years. However, we believe strongly in crafting this budget that towns and cities should be given a chance to prepare for these changes. So no town will see a reduction in total municipal statutory grants over the next 2 years. And those towns that see an increase in funding under the formula will see a gradual increase beginning immediately. The bipartisan budget also helps our senior citizens by eliminating the state income tax on Social Security benefits immediately. And it phases out the state income tax on pensions for single persons with up to $75,000 of income who are retired, and for couples up to $100,000 in annual income living in retirement. Citizens on a fixed income desperately need this tax relief. Legislators who vote against the veto override are voting for something. They're voting for the governor's executive order, even though there is a balanced budget on the table that passed the legislature with bipartisan support. A vote against a veto override is a vote effectively for Governor Malloy's draconian executive order and all the devastation it will wreak upon our towns, the elderly, and our disabled citizens. Legislators who vote against a veto override are voting to allow nonprofits to continue being cut when we have a budget that restores most of their funding. This is heartless and irresponsible. Legislators who vote against a veto override are voting to allow schools to be decimated by cuts and teachers' jobs to be threatened when a solution is before us. This is reckless. Legislators who vote against the veto override are voting to deny senior citizens the tax relief they badly need, and they are hurting senior citizens programs like Meals on Wheels and the Connecticut Home Care Program. I believe it was wrong for the governor to veto this budget, and I hope that lawmakers can come together to override the veto. Lawmakers have to decide if they're going to override the veto. Are they comfortable turning the keys over to Governor Malloy by himself to manage the state all by himself? A governor whose policies have failed over and over and over again in his first 7 years in office. Or do legislators want to vote to override the veto and set a new course for Connecticut? A new path is what the budget offers and what our state needs. Thank you for being here today. I do want to make one extemporaneous comment. I know that in reading the press releases from the Democrats who are opposed to a veto override, one of the things they claim is that the Republican budget hurts working families. Nothing could be farther from the truth. First of all, to begin with, their own budget proposal did reduce the earned income tax credit. Their own budget proposal, they were willing to impose a sales tax, which is a regressive tax. They proposed increasing a tax on cell phones, another regressive tax. They proposed increasing a surcharge or surtax on restaurant bills, another regressive tax. So enough of this phony advocacy for working families by the party that has proposed regressive taxes that would be borne by all the working families in Connecticut, the poor and the middle class in particular. Enough of the phoniness, enough of supporting the party line. It's time to vote for a budget override and vote for what's in the best interest of the people of Connecticut, not the party line of the Democratic Party. Thank you very much.